Welcome to episode 217 of the Brainy Business, Understanding the Psychology of Why People Buy. In today's episode, I'm so excited to introduce you to Scott Schutte and Dr. Janine Stichter of the Healthy Behavior Institute. Ready? Let's get started.
You are listening to the Brainy Business Podcast, where we dig into the psychology of why people buy and help you incorporate behavioral economics into your business, making it more brain-friendly. Now here's your host, Melina Palmer.
Hello, everyone. My name is Melina Palmer, and I want to welcome you to the Brainy Business Podcast. In today's conversation, I am joined by Scott Schutte and Dr. Janine Stichter, co-founders of the Healthy Behavior Institute. Scott is a personal trainer, weight loss behavior coach, gym owner, and fitness educator who has successfully guided thousands of people on their fitness journeys. His education and experience have led him to work with many clients and educate other fitness professionals on how to be successful coaches with an emphasis on behavior change, which makes for a perfect pairing with Janine, whom he affectionately calls Dr. J. And so you may hear me do that throughout the episode as well. It's very catchy. So let's jump right in with that. Dr. J has been in the field of behavior change for over 20 years as a researcher, author, educator, and practitioner. Her career has focused on understanding the why behind behavior, I love that, and identifying clear practices that are practical and result in sustained change. As part of her research, she has procured over $14 million in federal grants as lead investigator and published over 100 peer-reviewed articles, as well as 3 books. As an educator, she has chaired 40-plus doctoral dissertations and master's committees, provided over 150 international and national presentations, and done over 80 workshops. As a practitioner, she served as division director and clinical director of behavior interventions for national centers, as well as consults for businesses on employee engagement and organizational health. Together, they co-founded the Healthy Behavior Institute, an educational platform for fitness professionals and gym owners that specialize in behavior modification. Their educational materials provide professionals with a clear system to add an additional service for better client results and increased revenue. As you're going to hear me mention in the conversation, I was particularly interested in doing this interview because they're changing an industry where everyone has just sort of accepted that people don't do what they should, where everyone keeps doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results instead of trying something new. Thankfully, they have. And so I've asked them to enlighten us on the work they do and the advice they would give to others looking to do something similar in any industry. Now, before we jump into that interview, I want to be sure you know that during our conversation, I mention a lot of concepts with past episodes of the show, but no need for you to take notes because I've already done that for you. The show notes for the episode with my top recommended next episodes, related books, and other important links, including ways to connect with Scott and Dr. J, are all within the show notes for the episode, which are waiting for you within the app you're listening to and at thebrainybusiness.com/217. All the freebies for the Brainy Business are housed within our free community of behavioral economics enthusiasts called the Be Thoughtful Revolution. When you go to those show notes and request your freebie, you'll be automatically added to the group and get access to all sorts of freebies. Plus, have a way to connect with me and others from around the world who love behavioral economics and want to share about it. Again, any freebie from the Brainy Business will get you into the group, including the one for this episode. You can also join the Be Thoughtful Revolution at any time using the link bit.ly/join-BETR. Now let's jump right in. Scott, Janine, welcome to the Brainy Business Podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yes, we had so much fun getting this all ready and set up. I know we were talking about the psychology just briefly, and I think so. I talk about vulnerability loops briefly in my new book, and this is very much the enduring something together that has bonded us forever in this
Absolutely
world that we now know we, come together in that way. So a little bit of a vulnerability loop there, I guess. But if you can just share a little bit about your backgrounds for people who don't yet know you, who you are and how your work is related in with behavioral science.
Yeah, Dr. J likes when I kick this off first, so I'll take a stab at it. So I've been in the fitness space for almost 2 decades now. Started as a personal trainer, moved into as a gym owner, and recently partnered with Dr. J on teaching other fitness professionals on the behavior science. What's fascinating about the behavior science is it's commonplace in so many things and so many things that you talk about, but in the fitness space, when it comes to actually working with clients, it's barely used. And so Dr. J actually became a client of mine about a decade ago. And through our conversations, through training, I found out this whole wonderful world of behavior science that is not taught to my profession. And so, after many discussions, we've been working with, other gyms and other trainers and putting this process together to educate fitness professionals on the behavior science.
Yeah. And, my doctorate's in behavior analysis. And so for the last several decades, I've been researching and running clinics and just helping people in general with behavior science work towards the goals, overcome challenges, think about things differently, and build habits and lifestyles that they want. And the fitness industry has been always an area that I was really fascinated with and interested in because it's about helping people have that lifestyle and that life that they want. And so in talking with Scott and all of that time, realizing to me, it's so, it's a given. If you're helping people make changes in their life, you would use behavior science to do so. And in talking with Scott, he said over a decade ago, where I'm like, oh, wow, that's not part of the training. It's not part of the systems. Yet the pain points that fitness professionals communicate to me signal this gap in how to get people from all this information to implementation. So it's been really fun and exciting to be part of that and give these amazing professionals who are so committed to helping people those extra tools and systems so that they can kind of, again, bridge that gap and see some nice change for their clients.
Yeah. So when we talk about the problem to be solved, and so first, of course, I have to say thank you to Andrew Gavigan, who is a longtime listener of the show. We've developed a friendship over the years. He's been a student of mine at A&M, and he had just said, hey, I just heard Scott and Dr. J, talk at this conference, and you should connect with them. And, here we are, right? So now you're on the podcast, and I think the story you have is really interesting. So, of course, thank you to Andrew for that. So I talk a lot about the problem to be solved. And I think in the case of behavioral science in general, and I know myself as well, when I'm doing a talk or anything, the case for the need of behavioral economics and behavioral science often comes from a health or wellness sort of example, right? So I will say a lot, we all know that we should eat better and exercise, but then we find ourselves binge eating Cheetos and watching Netflix on a Friday, right? This is the thing that I use as my sort of joke example, right? And we all know that we want to do better, but we don't. So we have this action and tension gap. And what I think is so interesting is everyone in the industry knows that this is a problem, right? That we know what they should do. They know what they should do. We show them what to do. They say they're going to do it, and then they don't.
Exactly.
And you just keep, in the definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. And so I think it's so interesting that, again, as an entire industry, it's just sort of accepted. And I know this is common across others as well. How did you say, enough is enough? And then what are sort of the behaviors you're bringing in and helping to really identify what the true problem is to help, trainers and by proxy individuals to change their behavior, to actually change their behavior?
I'll kind of kick this off. I think what gives the trainers or the fitness industry this misinformation is a lot of times we're looking at it through our own lens. we're like, well, I can eat out of plastic containers all day and I can not snack at night and I'm not drinking. I'm going to work out every day. And they're like, if the clients would just follow what I'm saying, they would get this too. And then occasionally you get a client that comes in and follows everything that you say. They're more of these kind of extreme people and you have these great transformations. And so, over the 2 days talking with trainers, they're like, well, I just want more clients like that. I'm like, of course you do. Like they just do exactly what you say. But that's not the reality that we live in the sense of, there's so many people, and I'm working with general pop. It's not high caliber athletes. And so many of them, they have jobs, they have kids, they have stressors. And so it's not the same world as a 20-year-old trainer that doesn't have these other responsibilities. And so I think with us we're so used to seeing things through our own lens, and we occasionally have these clients that are these extreme things. And then we have these, that when clients come in, they even struggle articulating what they really want. In the sense of like, well, I want to lose weight. We're like, well, if you want to lose weight, you do X, Y, or Z. Because what I talk about, what Dr. J and I do is it's kind of uniting the physiology with the psychology. So many on the fitness side really know the physiology of like, okay, here's what we should do nutrition wise. Here's the calories. Here's the macros. Here's what we should do training wise. You follow this plan, you'll do it. But very few people actually execute that. And Dr. J can get into some of the behavior science and the root causes of what we teach and kind of go over.
Yeah. And to segue into that, I also feel like the way that the fitness and the health industry is marketed to people has perpetuated that on both sides. Because trainers coming in, fitness professionals coming into the field or health professionals, they're also seeing this marketing. They're being told to market in this extreme way, the 30-day challenges, the do this and then you'll have this. And even the clients that are what people call highly compliant and do that, let's look at them in a year. Let's look at them 6 months later, because a lot of us can do something for a period of time that's an extreme, but we don't maintain it. And one of the reasons that we don't maintain it is because the behaviors that we already have, some of which we want to replace, right? That Cheeto snacking kind of thing it's serving us a purpose. And that's sort of the root cause. So one of the premises in behavior science and behavior analysis, which is my area, is that behavior does not persist unless it's being reinforced. It's serving a purpose. And so if I'm late night snacking, there's a number of reasons for that. And if any professional is like, oh, just stop doing it. Well, two things. Psychologically, I'm hearing that the behaviors that are not serving my goals, I need to stop. So now I'm pairing health with restriction. I'm pairing health with sacrifice. I'm hearing like, oh, I'm already stressed and I already got so much on my plate and I thought I deserved this. And now I'm hearing I don't get to do this. And instead, when we talk about the root causes, we use the EATS model. It's the 4 principles out of behavior science. We just kind of created the acronym to help remember. And so it's escape, attention, tangible, and sensory. And so the point of that is that if I'm doing my Cheetos binge at night, am I doing it because I want to just binge watch my show, eat, and get away from my day? It's the coping mechanism that I've done to escape sort of the stressors, the day to day. Maybe it's even like if I wait late enough and everybody else in my household's asleep, I don't even have to share my Cheetos, which is even better, and I get to escape. So other times it's, hey, I have a friend or my kid or significant other, they're snacking and they're eating, and it's a way for us to connect. And so it's attention, and I'm getting that connection. Other times it's, I work really hard or I'm stressed and I deserve something. I deserve a treat. And we see this a lot with alcohol too. And then sensory is, it tastes good, it feels good, or it's serving some sort of, we talk a lot about this with like, and I did this when I was running clinics, is at night I would have patient notes that I'm doing and I'm trying to stay awake. I put my kids to bed and I'm trying to stay awake to get these things done. So I'm dumping popcorn in my mouth so I can chew and create that sensory impact so that I can cognitively somewhat stay focused. So the point is, if we can figure out and help people figure out what the root cause of the behavior is, then what is the replacement that matches that? And so what else do I love playing guitar? So I'm going to play guitar instead of that Cheetos bag. Am I going to find a game or whether it's video games or any type of game or interaction to have that attention and connection, and so on and so forth. And so that's a big part of, it was clear to me that people hadn't been oriented to that. And we've got all these strategies, but if you pair the wrong strategy, two things happen. It's not serving a purpose for me, and that's not meeting my purpose. So I'm not going to maintain that behavior. And then the second part is, because I can't maintain this new strategy because it's not serving the same purpose, cognitively, I'm also starting to have lower self-esteem. I don't think I have willpower, all of those things. And that creates a resistance to intervention cycle also that can persist over time and make it more difficult.
Yeah, I love and thank you so much for walking through the example there and showing how I could be eating Cheetos all day and for different reasons. So it's not like, oh, I'm a sensory eater. And so ta-da, like we've fixed it now, right? Because I know that that's why I'm eating. So I need one of those, like a fidget spinner or those stupid pop things, the bubble thing. My kids have those too. I don't understand why that's the thing. But so that's apparently a thing now that everybody has to have, but it's, that distraction attention or something, right? But to know that it's not just like, this is why you do this and now you've fixed the problem, but that it's a thing that can flow throughout the day, and you just having that awareness is helpful. But along those lines, and not giving away all the, secret sauce of what it is that you do in your certificate program and everything. But where do we go from here? Like, now I get it, right? This is the thing where I'm sure, and when you do your talks and everybody's like, my mind is blown. I totally get that. And okay. So when you figured this out, Dr. J, as we've got now as your nickname forever, how did you kind of bring that together in working with Scott? How did this kind of come about? And what's sort of the next step in actually using that information to help people achieve their goals?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the short answer is sort of two prongs. One is, and again, I've built systems for this type of things most of my career. And so communicating to Scott, to anyone, that this isn't about being someone's therapist. It's not about an hour-long conversation diving into childhood or whatever, which are important things at sometimes for certain people under certain conditions, but not necessarily the role of the fitness professional. But that we can get information from people, key pieces of information, and using a behavior system in a very short amount of time. And so we just kind of work together to create a system where we can use these principles in a 15-minute consultation with a client and really get this information and build on it over time. And so that's what we built together, so that when someone takes our certification or learns about this, there's just this plug and play. Here's a system, and here's how I get information, and taking it off the gym floor. So a lot of times people have conversations with clients or others while they're physically training them, and really spending some time also understanding that diminishes some of the impact, the memory, and the recall, and all of those types of things. Do you want to add on?
Yeah, let me take a couple steps back of actually how we got here. So we actually started by writing a book. It's on Amazon. It's Ready Fits, Redefining Fitness. And so with that book, it was written for the end consumer, just kind of going over these concepts. And with talking to one of my colleagues, he's like, why don't you teach other coaches how to do this? And there's one thing getting the information in a book, which is helpful. Like, there's lots of books out there. You have amazing books. That's good. But having someone coach you through that is just the next step. And sometimes we need this, because even knowing this stuff, having a guide, and this is all aspects of life, having a guide through this is the fast track, and it's going to keep you on point. And so, like, we started teaching coaches, and part of that system, and we did an hour-long presentation on this yesterday, so I'll try to do it in the next 30 seconds, is like breaking down like what's goal clarification, root cause of behavior, minimal effective dose. So I'll break that one real quick. Is like, so many things in the industry, it's like, let's go to extremes. Let's cut out all these certain kinds of food, or let's work out every day. Where we're talking about, what's the least amount you have to change to trend in the right direction, because that's more sustainable. And then how do we emphasize and celebrate small wins? Because we also hear people in this space are like, well, if your client isn't compliant, fire them. I'm like, that's terrible advice. These people are coming for support. You don't just fire them because they're not listening. And then this constant reevaluation, because we just talked about, you have a child turning 1, I have a 1.5-year-old, like life changes when they have that. So people go through different stages of life. They have different wants, they have different desires. So this is an ongoing process that we need to reevaluate, we need to reconfigure, we need to keep working on it. Because one of the things I really like playing with my clients is like, okay, we're trending in the right direction for whatever your goal is. How do we make it easier? How do we make it more enjoyable? Because that's more a long-term solution that we're all looking for.
Yeah. Oh, one important note. Thank you for mentioning your book. It's definitely going to be linked in the show notes for everyone to be able to access. So we're good there. Don't worry. You don't have to go look it up. It's there for you, as well as lots of other past episodes that are related. I have one on the dose brain chemicals, which I think is very tied in with what Dr. J was talking about, episodes on habits, the really amazing product Shape'a that I think is tied in. Lots of great stuff linked in the show notes for everybody. One of the things that I think, having been through the ups and downs of physical fitness myself, I'm okay with eating my food out of a plastic container. I also eat a lot of Cheetos, if we're honest, right? Like I know. And my biggest problem is liquid calories. I love chai tea lattes. The audience knows I talk about it all the time. I try to cut them out, and then I'll cut out soda for long periods of time. And then I sort of joke that I fall off the wagon, fill it with soda, and then drink it all. Like, go like way off the edge from time to time. But having been through all of this and trying different trainers and programs and 30 days to whatever stuff, they always have a component of journaling. And I know why it's important. And I know people that track those sorts of behaviors do better. And we just talked about this when Chuck Howard was on the show. He's talking about tracking for financial goals too. The same thing, when you write it down, you are more likely to be compliant. And I know it's one of those things that, correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, but I think that most clients don't do it, right? You tell them they should journal and then they don't.
Just for clarity, we're not talking about like grateful journaling. We're talking about journaling food
journal. Yeah. An activity journal, that sort of thing.
So with a lot of my clients and with you, if you came in and I'm working with someone like you and you're like, I love Cheetos. I'm like, let's find a way to keep it in your diet then. Like, I think that's an important, and we can do those things. For me, going back to the minimal effective dose, journaling, tracking on MyFitnessPal, doing calories and macros is something I ideally don't take people to. Now, when we play, so say the goal was to lose weight, and say we figure out the big caloric offenders and we match those big caloric offenders with what's the root cause of that, and we find proper replacements. And if we match that, the Cheetos for, you're doing it for escape in the evening, we found something else that you enjoy doing that you could get an escape. Like one of my mom's, it's like, I do an Epsom salt bath. My husband watches the kid can't get in there. It's my escape. And so we went for something that adds a few hundred extra calories to something that's relaxing. You absorb some magnesium through there. So it's in a beneficial way. And then we'll see if you're trending towards your goals. If you are, then we don't need to track, because we're just doing the minimum that we need to do to trend in that direction. Now, if we address the big caloric offenders and we have the right replacements and we get and we don't see the direction that we want, or we get that we're stalled, there might be a point that we do need to track. And it's a good short-term exercise for people to do to kind of learn, because it's amazing when people write their food down. They're like, I didn't realize my protein bar was mainly just carbs and fat. Or I didn't realize I was really having this snack then. So it's a good education tool. But when I talk to clients about it, it's not something I want long-term, because people can be very obsessive about tracking and weighing everything. And the research on people tracking their food it's not very good at all. And so for me, it's a short-term learning tool. But it's not something I want to do long-term with people.
Yeah. And I think I would add, one is, in some people, writing it down is a great way to sort of make it a real thing, concrete, all of those types of things. But some people just naturally struggle with that. It's not, and we talk a lot about in another facet of what we do with all of this is personalities. And your clients are coming with different personalities, different ways that they're naturally wired, and we need to meet them where they're at. So just having something like, everybody food journals. that may work for some people and be really helpful, and other people it can be anxiety ridden, or it's just one more thing they forgot to do today. They screwed up and they feel like crap about, I'm a failure, I don't have willpower, I'm not disciplined, whatever. So, and Scott alludes that, we want to balance that. The other thing is that if it's informative, and I just want to stress that, as Scott mentioned, if it's informative to someone, we had a person recently that is trying to lose a decent amount of weight and is sharing that she's only eating 900 calories and she's really stumped. And so mentally what can happen is that people are like, okay, it must be my metabolism, I'm aging, I've hit menopause, and maybe this isn't, all of these things. And just by doing a little bit of observing and talking more about what she's eating, realized that there was a fast food run that she did naturally that she just way underestimated what that was, which is so hard to correctly estimate. But even understanding like, oh, I'm still at a surplus, I have shot at still losing this weight. Whereas if we'd let that go, then it's just that self-fulfilling prophecy of this isn't going to work because I've done this before. So using it, as Scott's pointing out, at certain points when necessary to educate or just to give a better picture. And if that fast food run is something near and dear to our heart, then we just need to figure out where else we can make some adjustments.
Yeah. And that's where I was going to say thank you, Scott, for the point about it's not a forever thing, because I have to write a lot for work, and I got so much going on, as does everyone, right? But you think, oh yeah, I'm going to write that down later. And then somehow, 50 Cheetos became 5 in the way that I remember it, right? And it makes me feel better about myself to write down that I only had a few of them, and we estimate the only person I'm hurting in that case is me, but it doesn't really feel like it when I'm writing it into the journal, right? My husband and I have talked about this a lot. If I don't mentally acknowledge that I ate the calories, it's like they don't exist to me, but my body is still ingesting, like I'm still absorbing it all, whether I write it somewhere or admit to it or not, right? But it's like, I'm just going to take a little treat and no one will know. I think that's some of that escape piece, right? But my stomach obviously knows, and so do my thighs, right? Like somebody registered this. So I think that's such an interesting, even if you ask people to write it down, they're going to fudge that a little bit. But this is where, in making the case for a reason to journal for a short period of time to try to identify the underlying behavior problem, and problem's not the right word to use there, but what you're trying to get so you can properly replace. And so I mentioned the dose brain chemical piece. And so knowing also, which is our dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins, for everyone that's listening and is like, what are you talking about? Again, there's an episode 123 on that. And when we look at habits and that it's cues and we're trying to fulfill something, like you said, but it can be really hard. Charles Duhigg has advice about tracking for basically eternity, where he found out why he was eating cookies at 2 p.m. was actually he liked the engagement with other people. And it was this social piece, this EATS model being one where it gives you a place to start to try to understand the behavior. And so if you see that you're eating cookies at 8 p.m., or opening the fridge and trying to have a moment away so that I can just eat my frozen cookie dough or something. And then, like you said, replace it with the bath and have a conversation with someone else in my life to help change that behavior. I just like that it helps bring some validity to why the journals can work for people, and where you can look for, what was going on for me? What was it like when I was eating those Cheetos at 8:00 at night? Why do I keep doing that at this time? What is that? And Janine, I know you had talked about when we did kind of our fact finding call, if I was eating the Cheetos with my husband who happens to be snacking and then trying to replace, can you explain, and hopefully you remember what I'm talking about in this scenario, but where that can kind of go awry if you tell me just to stop and it's not fixing the thing that I'm seeking in my life?
Right, exactly. So if there's a tendency to, be snacking middle of the evening, your husband's snacking, you guys are kind of connecting over this, or gosh, I love guac and chips, and we're sitting there kind of sharing about our day or whatever. and you're telling me like, yeah, I have a tendency to have like, whether it's drinks or the snacking. And I say, oh, okay, well, why don't you go take a walk? You wanted to get more steps in. So why don't you go take a walk? And that way you'll get more steps in and you'll be away from the guac and chips. Somebody might recommend that. And it seems very logical, right? It's kind of like stay away. But if your husband's still home and he's eating guac and chips and it's your time to connect, that strategy is not going to support that. And then it also might make you feel very isolated and lonely. And so now you have that negative reinforcement paradigm and stimulus to that walk, which we may still want to do to get more steps or movement in. And so having these conversations around, well, it's my connection with my husband, and for all of us to hear that and say, oh, would you both like to take a walk together? Or if it's just fun to have a snack and a glass of wine after work and connect, can we just adjust the amounts? Or the other thing, and Scott talked about this, an effective dose, is we don't have to adjust everything for every day. So if it's something you do 5 days out of the week, and 2 of those we adjust the food a little bit, or we do something else together, that's moving in that direction, and it may serve all of those. So did I get kind of at what you were referencing?
Absolutely. And just to make it more of a conscious choice and knowing, okay, this is fulfilling a connection process for me and hopefully for my husband as well. And so we're acknowledging we're here for the conversation, and we also like guac and chips, but we're going to make sure it's a really good connection point to help, I guess, satiate that part of life and know that the chips are a supplement to that. Right.
Absolutely. And the other thing I'll also mention is that's super empowering for yourself then, because I hear a lot of people talk about like, I can't help myself, or I have no willpower, or anytime I see chips, I'm all in. And so they feel almost, when you start to listen to that language, they're feeling helpless. They're feeling like they can't control that. And to your point, if I understand I'm doing it to connect, and I start to become thoughtful about that connection, and I can see that there's other ways that I can do that, the chips and guac aren't ruling my life. They just might be enhancing an experience. I just don't need that particular enhancement every single day. And I can have a great experience doing some other things as well.
Yeah. Like you said, I love that empowerment piece, right? So when we shine a light on the thing, when whatever the underlying fear or behavior or problem, I teach a class on goal setting and talk about this a lot. When you actually look at that boogeyman and you see it's just a coat, and you're like, well, I mean, that was a totally random example if people don't get what I'm saying in that way. Like in the dark, the shadow looks like a monster. We turn on the light. It's a jacket, right?
Yeah.
In case that made no sense to anybody else.
I was tracking.
Okay, cool. Right. I said it and then realized that is super weird that someone's going to follow up and say, what were you talking about? So with that, this is why understanding the problem, the behavior shift you're trying to make is so important for any business problem, business model, individual goals, just all the things. And what I really love about what you all have done is, like I said, taking something where an industry has accepted that this is just the way it is. Like you said, Scott, you don't get to say, well, like, I'm just going to pick the 1% of people that are naturally good at this to be my clients. Like, that's lame, because most people are not that way, and they deserve help and healthy, happy lives as well, right? So we don't want all the fitness professionals to only help those for who this is easy for, because that's a very small percentage of the population. And so if you were to think through giving advice for people that are in any sort of an industry, right, to be able to look at if they see they're in a space where people continue to have these problems. And like, just as an example, I know there are a lot of people in financial services, working at credit unions, banks, investments, whatever, very similar, where you say, oh, if people would just save more money, they would do better, right? Very similar to what you're talking about here in health and wellness. So it tracks across industry. What sort of advice would you have if somebody wants to, I guess, innovate in their own space to be able to change behaviors?
I'll start and see what Scott's got on this one. for me, what I like to tell people is be cognizant of not trying to address the symptom, but actually look at the why. And so if I go to my medical doctor with a stomach ache, I don't want it to be like, I'm really good at gallbladder removal. Let's go with that. I can have a stomach ache for so many reasons, including chips and guac. And so I want to say, okay, this is how it feels, or for somebody that's working at a bank or working in these financial, this is what I'm seeing my customers do. This is what I'm seeing my clients do or say. Now I got to figure out what's really going on. What's the why behind there? And Scott mentioned this earlier, is that when he was talking about a little bit of goal clarification, sometimes people use language that doesn't actually represent what they want or what they need. But a lot of times people use language that represents what they have heard they're supposed to. So if somebody comes in and says, I want to save money, I really do. But they're not saving money. Do they want to save money just to save money? Do they have a goal in mind? Would they prefer to invest? What does saving mean to them, and why do they want to do it? And really, so anytime you're struggling with those type of things, view it as a symptom. Behavior is a manifestation of what's going on inside of our heads. And so it's just the outward experience. It's the outward expression. And so if I really want to help people adjust their behavior, shape it, I need to go past that symptom. So I think for a simple trick, that would be the first place that I would go.
If I can have you expand on one thing too, with the EATS model, which I don't believe is only tied to fitness and
not at all
eating chips and things, right? So
yes, it applies across the board.
So can you give a couple examples from your training of how that might apply to some other areas that people can kind of have in mind? Is there anything that's really easy to kind of throw out there? And if not, no worries. But
I love your financial example, because you can use the same thing we're doing. So instead of overeating calories, they're overspending dollars. So you don't really have to change anything around. It's the same thing. It's escape, it's attention, it's tangible, it's sensory, and finding the replacement for that. But instead of replacing the calories, you're finding ways just to have a replacement that's spending less money. So it's almost the exact same thing. You just have a different starting point of what you're thinking about.
And a great example of that is if you've got a client that's like supposed to be doing one thing with their money and they go and buy a $10,000 watch. You're just like, yeah, it wasn't exactly in the plan. Why are they doing that? Or if they tend to do that or buy the, high end this or that, is it because it's tangible? Like, I deserve something special. I've worked hard. I've put 30 years into this career, and it's time for me just to, okay, well, that's really good to know. And then how else? Can that be in some trips, but maybe not so much retail therapy? Is it because attention, like I want people to know I'm successful. And so to me, that's a visual symbol of that. And that might be a need for some people, but recognizing that and then maybe even budgeting for that. That's different than saying you just got to save money and stop buying this expensive clothes. But if I say, hey, why don't we put, $500 away each month so that you can buy the latest Prada that comes out or Gucci or whatever it is, or take that really fancy trip. And then if it's escape and you're online late at night, buying everything and anything that you saw on Instagram and doing that because you're just trying to you don't want to think about your responsibilities, whatever. Okay, that's really helpful to know. What else could I be doing? Could I be diving into a really juicy, fun fiction book and just those types of things? And so to Scott's point, and also you mentioned it's not unique to fitness. It's really, like I said, in the behavior analysis literature and research, which has decades and decades and decades of, it's just called the 4 functions of behavior. And so we just call it root cause because it works better in the spaces that more the common marketplace.
Such wonderful advice. Thank you so much. And I think that really does help to make it tangible for everyone of how they can start to think about whatever problem they're facing. And I would challenge everyone listening, if you say, yeah, obviously that works for health and for fitness and for saving money, but that really doesn't apply to me and the type of work I do, I say that's wrong. There's a way that this will apply, right? There's some other behavior, whether you're looking at business to business, it's still made up of people making choices, and it's still brains that are doing weird stuff that we want to try to understand and address. So I really, really love the EATS way to look at this, to be able to say, is it escape? Is it attention? Is it tangible? Is it sensory? And to know that any one thing can be all of those things at any given time. Is that yes? Okay. We got a good enthusiastic head nod from Dr. J. So, perfect. Well, I say this, I feel like with every guest, I could talk to you all day long, but I know you have busy, important lives. You have lives to go change, which is wonderful in a, positive way. So for everyone who is now so excited to be learning more, what is the best way to connect with you, to see more about what you do and anything else?
So really just checking us out on our website, healthybehaviorinstitute.com. We have some good free resources on there. We have our contact information on there, and it's just a good way to kind of dive a little bit deeper into some of the stuff we're doing. And so you can learn more, whether you're in the fitness space or you just want to learn more about working on yourself.
Wonderful. Well, we will definitely be linking to the Healthy Behavior Institute website, healthybehaviorinstitute.com, as well as your book, Redefining Fitness. And are you on any of the socials? Are you on Twitter or anything like that?
Instagram and Facebook.
All right. And so what's your handle on the gram?
Mine is Dr. Janine Stichter. And again, hopefully you'll be spelling that out.
We will link to the spelling on that for you. Okay. And then Scott?
Yeah, mine is Scott Schutte, and probably need that spelling out too. So,
all right.
We're sorry, everyone.
It's all as well. So Scott and Dr. J, with their complexly spelled names that don't sound exactly like they look, will be written out for you in the show notes so you can follow them on Instagram and connect there. So thank you again, Scott and Janine, for joining me today. It was a delight to chat with you both.
Thanks for having us on.
Thank you very much.
Thank you again to Scott and Janine for joining me on the show today. What got your brain buzzing in today's conversation? For me, I really love how simple Dr. J has made the explanation and understanding of the EATS model for behavior analysis. One of the things I love the most about this model is that it allows you to see how every behavior can really be occurring for any of these reasons, and that the same person will flow through different states of why they use each one at various times of the day. As you heard me talk about last week in the episode on the unity principle, and looping in snips from when Dr. Dominic Packer was on the show, which really emphasized how often we mentally transition through different states and relations all day long. This is why context is so important to everything when it comes to applying behavioral economics. I don't think I can say this enough, even though I say it all the time. My students and clients always joke that my answer is, it depends to just about everything. And that's because it does. One application of something you read about in research or hear about on this show is not guaranteed to be exactly the same in your application, whatever that might be. Even if it looks on the surface like it's the same, there could be something small going on that you didn't realize was impacting behavior. That doesn't mean you did anything wrong or that the concept isn't true. It just means there's more investigation and testing to be done. And I love that Scott and Dr. J have shown how that doesn't have to be crazy complex, taking the time to explore and explain how every behavior could be a source of escape, a way to get attention, a way to get something tangible, or being sensory is a great way to understand and potentially shift that behavior. And I challenge you to find at least one example in each of the 4 categories for whatever the behavior is you're looking at. You may be tempted to say, well, this doesn't apply to my problem or work project because... Overcome that initial instinct and do some digging. I won't say that I guarantee that you can find something if you look hard enough, but essentially, I guarantee you that if you look hard enough, you can find something. If not, reach out to myself and Dr. J for some help in finding it. I'm sure it can be done. There are, of course, links in the show notes to connect with all of us and to learn more about the Healthy Behavior Institute. Whether you want to see what they're about, take one of their courses, or get certified, check out their podcast, get their book, it's all waiting for you, along with links to other related books, links, and past episodes at thebrainybusiness.com/217. And be sure to check out longtime listener Andrew Gavigan's website when you're in there as well, because this episode would not have happened without him reaching out to me to make the suggestion and connection to Scott and Janine. You can find him at andrewgavigan.com, AndrewGavigan.com, which is also linked for you in the show notes. Thank you again, Andrew. And of course, if you have a recommendation for someone who you think should be a guest on the show, or a concept or a topic you want to be sure I cover, please reach out to me, Melina at thebrainybusiness.com, or find me on any of the social platforms. You can find me as Melina Palmer on LinkedIn and The Brainy Biz pretty much everywhere else. I look forward to hearing from you. And thank you again to Scott Schutte and Dr. Janine Stichter for joining me on the show today. It was a delight to chat with and learn from you. Join me next week for another Brainy episode of the Brainy Business Podcast. It's going to be a lot of fun. You don't want to miss it. Until then, thanks again for listening and learning with me. And remember to be thoughtful.
Thank you for listening to the Brainy Business Podcast. Melina offers virtual strategy sessions, workshops, and other services to help businesses be more brain-friendly. For more free resources, visit thebrainybusiness.com.